It is a monster hurricane, Sandy, now heading up to the eastern seaboard on a collision course with two other weather systems.
Throughout the next hour, we will take you live to the northeast where people boarded up windows and filled sandbags in preparation for this superstorm. And of course, we have crews live along our coast to look at the impact of Sandy on North Carolina. Good evening and thanks for joining us for this special coverage of Hurricane Sandy. I'm David Crabtree. And I'm Deborah Morgan. We have a lot to bring you tonight. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Greg Fischel for the latest track on Hurricane Sandy. And Greg joins us now from the Hurricane Center. Greg, it is still a hurricane, right?
It is still a hurricane as of the 5 o'clock advisory, and no reason to believe that it'll change intensity a whole lot during the course of the next 12 hours, and then additional intensification from a variety of different sources, perhaps coming tomorrow and tomorrow night prior to landfall. As we take a look at the satellite and the radar mosaic here, you can see that the rain, like yesterday, has stayed down east in North Carolina, not getting back to the triangle. There's the center of circulation, and just look at the tremendous expanse of this cloud shield with this storm. This is a monster storm in size right now and will become a monster storm in terms of intensity as we head toward tomorrow and tomorrow night. Now, as we take a look at the forecast track, this hasn't changed a whole lot. It's moving northeast now, but it'll start to turn toward the north later tonight and then make a dramatic hook toward the north and toward the northwest and west northwest, probably coming inland late tomorrow evening, somewhere along the Jersey coast with that cone of uncertainty. And to the north of there is where the problems are going to be absolutely huge, perhaps mind-boggling, around the New York City area. Now, as we take a look at some other information relating to Sandy here, these are current wind gusts, 49 at Norfolk, 49 at Kill Devil Hills. The system is offshore and actually moving away from the coast right now, so we wouldn't expect these conditions to worsen. If anything, get a little bit better as we head on through the evening, at least in the short term. And some of the offshore buoys just off the coast of Duck, 49-mile-per-hour wind gusts there. And if we take a look at the wave heights, you can see that the seas just offshore of the Outer Banks are running at 23 feet and down near the circulation center about 30 feet. Now, we've been saying for days now that this storm is going to be epic in proportions, and as bad as it is along our coast, it's going to be infinitely worse to the north. We'll be back to tell you why that's going to be the case and how bad it will get coming up in just a few minutes. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Greg, and we will check back in with you in just a bit. We have live team coverage on the coast. Brian Mims is at Wrightsville Beach. Renee Chu is on the Outer Banks.
Gusty winds, rain, hours of punishing waves. Renee joins us now live from Kill Devil Hills, which is seeing a lot of flooding there as well. Renee?
David, do I look any taller to you? Because I feel taller, and here's why. As photographer Mark Simpson will zoom out here, I am standing on a sand dune that was not here before. The winds have just pushed up all this sand onto the beach, so we've got this mini sand hill going. We've been dealing with the rain all day, very dreary, and when it's pelting at you from winds 30 to 50 miles an hour, it is downright miserable. Now, here's the latest from Dare County emergency management officials. Road closures throughout the region because of ocean overwash. Highway 12 on Hatteras Island at Oregon Inlet closed because of sand and water covering it. Some areas on Hatteras Island experiencing flooding already. And we've seen some flooding here on the northern part of the Outer Banks. This nonstop rain and wind just making life miserable. All you hear is a constant roar. The outer bands of Sandy hovering over the Outer Banks provides surround sound. Wind gusts that shred flags, shake shingles, and bend trees like sea oats. You can even hear the sound side in Lizzie Constanzer's backyard that backs up to Buzzard Bay. What a view at sunset. Quite a threat during a hurricane. What's your state of mind at this point?
I'm nervous. I'm nervous.
She fears Sandy could be another Irene.
There was about up to here.
Last year's hurricane sucked water from the Sound and pushed it back with force, flooding Constanzer's home.
Blew everything out. It moved walls. It blew off my gas tank. I had to get a new roof. It was about $17,000 worth of damage.
And then to hear about Sandy's westerly winds, not good for Soundside homes.
Might be that way till Tuesday or Wednesday, which indicates a lot of flooding for us.
High tide this morning, the house was surrounded by water.
Realtor Jeff Scott is checking out an oceanside property in Kitty Hawk for flooding.
We actually put it under contract earlier this week.
So far, so good. Water has not creeped inside, but other homes are sitting in water. Beach roads resemble splash rides when cars drive through.
all in a vacuum of wind that has yet to let up.
The scary thing is at night when you think you're going to lose your roof and it's that the wind is howling and you can't see anything.
It is very scary indeed when you have this wind howling, and you can see the wind is just still blowing all the sand, and it's also causing sporadic power outages here along the Outer Banks. Now, as bad as this looks now, conditions are expected to worsen tomorrow. Sandy is going to be this prolonged event, so residents are being told to not let their guard down. David, back to you.
Wow, that is just amazing. Renee Chu, you don't look like you've grown any, but as light as you are, as heavy as that wind is, I hope that you will tie yourself down. And I mean that in all sincerity. That is Renee Chu live in Kill Devil Hills. We'll be back with Renee in the next half hour with a look at how Sandy is impacting businesses.
Well, right now it's difficult to travel very far on the coast. Many people are sending us pictures so we can help tell the story of Sandy and show the impact of the storm. WRAL's Brian Schrader joins us now from the .com Center with some incredible images. Brian?
That's right. We're going to head a little farther south on the Outer Banks to the Buxton and Frisco areas. A photographer named Donnie Bowers took these pictures earlier today and sent them into the WRAL newsroom. Start you off in Frisco, in that area where you can see the Pamlico Sound has pushed into town. These are pictures near milepost 65. And you're looking there at the High Tides Attic Consignment Shop. You can see how that water really rose earlier this afternoon. Now, Bowers' pictures of the Frisco Pier are making the rounds on Facebook this afternoon and evening as people around the world watch the storm. And this pier is no stranger to storms. This is the third year in a row that that pier has faced the wrath of a hurricane. Hurricane Earl badly damaged it in 2010 and Hurricane Irene last year. The owners have not been able to afford repairs from those two storms, and they're not sure if Sandy will do further damage. So the damage that you've been seeing perhaps on Facebook this afternoon of the Frisco Pier, that's not necessarily new damage. Some of that damage extends all the way back from Hurricane Earl in 2010. We'll keep an eye on that and let you know how things develop at the Frisco Pier. Let's head a little farther to the north, a little closer to Hatteras, where the driver of this truck had to stop and turn around as water spilled over the highway. The driver of this Jeep decided to proceed on through that standing water there. In Buxton, Bowers captured this picture of rough seas, and nearby people were trying to get sandbags in place. And you can see from the cut of the sand there at the bottom of the picture just how much sand this storm has washed away. Erosion is going to be a big story on the Outer Banks after the storm passes and we get a better look at the kind of damage it left behind. This is the owner of the Lighthouse View Motel in Buxton trying to get the debris out of a storm drain. In addition to the wind and force pushing all that water from the Sound onto shore, Outer Banks residents are dealing with a lot of rain from this storm. Latest estimates, at least 6 inches of water on the Outer Banks. And another picture from the Buxton area. This is the parking lot at Canadian Hole, and those are waves breaking from the Pamlico Sound over the pavement. It has been a rough afternoon on the Outer Banks, and you can take a look at more of Bowers' pictures on WRAL.com. You'll see a link to the slideshow in our story on the homepage. And if you're watching tonight online from the Outer Banks and you have some pictures that you'd like to share, we'd like to see them. Go to WRAL.com and enter Report It in the search box. Back to you.
Great pictures. Thank you, Brian. We'll go south of the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, and that's where you'll find Ocracoke Island. It's part of those fragile Outer Banks. Joining us now by phone is Alton Balance, a longtime resident. Alton, for how many hours now have you been dealing with the rain and these high winds?
Well, it seems like at least since very early in the morning, and we had a big surge of tide on the incoming tide. This morning was high tide about 7:30, and so we're definitely not letting our guard down, because on top of the amount of water that we already have around our homes and businesses, we're expecting with the new incoming tide later tonight and certainly in the morning even more.
So it's not over yet. Any damage so far that you've seen?
Not that I can see, unless some low-lying building got some damage or a vehicle. This is kind of a surprise, but if you look at the geography of Pamlico Sound, a northeast wind is shoving the expanse of Pamlico Sound water down on us at our part of the coast.
And I know you've been through these storms before. How does this one compare to some of the others?
All of them are so different. You know, they're a wind event, they're a flood event, they're a combination. This is strange because not much wind. It's such a huge storm, but with a lunar tide, and it's full moon tonight, I believe, that combined with can make a difference. At the old house where I live, a few extra inches can certainly flood it. So this is unusual because of its size, because of the fact that it's on a full moon, and it's going to take another day or two to get out of here.
It sure will. All right, Alton Balance, thank you so much for your insights there. Stay safe.
Thank you.
The southern portions along the North Carolina coastline, a lot calmer this evening. We're going to continue our team coverage now with Brian Mims, who's joining us live from Wrightsville Beach with a little wind. Brian?
Just a little wind, David. The rain stopped here early this morning. It's been a windy day here along the state's southern beaches with occasional gusts of 40 miles an hour. And that ocean has been really cranking some impressive waves. So naturally, the surfers have flocked to the surf. I've counted at least 50 surfers between here and the pier. They continue to come out. This storm has had a minimal impact on the Wilmington region. No power outages, no structural damage, but just on down the beach a piece, we found some places where Sandy, well, lived up to its name. Here at Carolina Beach, people shovel sand the way people in Buffalo might shovel snow. Marvin Mintz has property on the beach, and in a storm surge, the beach is on the property. He figures a foot of seawater sloshed over his carport. Was this unusual?
No, actually kind of mild.
Years of erosion have shrunk the space between ocean and front. A battery of boulders lines the front to stem the tide, but it's not always a rock-solid defense.
We had a combination of a full moon coming up, as well as, the hurricane sitting out there churning.
As reliably as the tides, many streets here get waterlogged in a storm. Canal Drive becomes a canal in fact. A chunk of it closed Saturday night at high tide and remained closed Sunday. Standing water and shifting sands weren't the only calling cards of Sandy.
It took that out. That was the steps to going down. You can see right there.
Oh, so
there were steps yesterday.
In the next community down, Curie Beach, the angry surf took swipes out of the dunes. Beach erosion, damaging and inevitable as it is, can be an opportunity for men wearing headphones, listening to metal.
For me today, it was fishing weights and a few old quarters.
John Kelly says Sandy didn't take as much sand as other storms. How much erosion have you seen here on the beach?
Well, it's hard to gauge, but I can tell by the dunes, there's probably been about 2 or 3 feet at least taken off at parts of the beach. Other parts, it looks like the sand's sort of building.
Here, where life's a beach, life goes on. And these salt-sprayed people wait without worrying too much for whatever's next on that wide horizon. And as I look down there on the southern horizon, it's a sky that's beginning to clear, but the winds will remain fairly gusty here along Wrightsville Beach as the night goes on, and the surf shall remain up. It's really fun watching these guys, David.
Yeah, I understand that, but there's also rip currents out there anytime you have a storm like this. So we know they know what they're doing, but we really hope they pay attention to exactly what they're doing. Brian Mims live at Wrightsville Beach. Brian, thank you. We have much more ahead tonight on Sandy. In 3 minutes, we'll take you to Delaware, where people in Sandy's path are heeding warnings and taking extra precautions.
And the storm is impacting travel up and down the eastern seaboard. We'll take a look at just how just ahead. Greg?
All right, Deb, and you can see Sandy here, a big storm in terms of geographical size. It's going to become a huge storm in terms of impact, one that could be the benchmark for the 21st century, and how something that starts as a hurricane can end up bringing a snowstorm to parts of North Carolina. We'll talk about that as well coming up.
And welcome back to our coverage of Hurricane Sandy. You're looking at the waves there just crashing, continuing to crash at Kill Devil Hills on the Outer Banks. That's the Sea Ranch Resort webcam. And Hurricane Sandy is not expected to make landfall until tomorrow evening, and it could impact 50 million people. So they're now getting ready. We've shown you the conditions up and down the North Carolina coastline. Now Duarte Geraldino is joining us live from Delaware with a look at what's happening from Virginia to the north. And as we mentioned, it's just hard to believe, Duarte, this is impacting as many millions of people as it is.
That's the difficulty that many people are facing right here. For sure, many are scared and have already evacuated, but you still have another contingent who say, I don't believe it's going to get that bad. But behind me, we can see those waves. Now, what you're looking at is a duned area that's fenced off, and then you see the water just kissing that dune area. Well, that ocean, there should be at least twice the area of those dunes, some 100 yards, and yet there is not. That water is inching towards the boardwalk, and the big fear is that there's going to be major flooding in at least this area of Delaware.
And I know up in New York and New Jersey, a lot of preparations being made up there. Tell us about some of those.
Well, one of the biggest things in New York City, they're talking about shutting down the mass transit system, which is really at the heart of the entire city. And once that's shut down, you really have to stay in place. So as a precaution, the mayor is ordering some mandatory evacuations of low-lying areas in New York City. And that's one of the things happening in New York City. And of course, all over the area, similar steps are being taken.
Duarte, Deborah and I were talking during the break a moment ago. Those of us who live here in North Carolina are accustomed to dealing with hurricanes and the threat of storms like this. What about the folks in Delaware? That part of the eastern seaboard doesn't exactly see weather like this every season.
No, not at all. I mean, what people here are used to is cold, is ice potentially. But the idea of these strong winds and water, that's what has people very nervous. In fact, we spoke with one home builder who said there are about a third, 1 in 3 homes in this area are relatively new, and they could possibly withstand a strong surge. But many of the older homes, in his particular view, he says they're not going to make it if it's that strong.
Yeah, we can imagine that. Duarte Geraldino, live in Delaware. Thanks, Duarte. Well, Sandy is the first real test for the new North Carolina Emergency Operations Center.
Ken Smith is live there tonight, where they are keeping a very close eye on all that is happening. Ken?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, David and Deborah. And the first real test actually happened during the Democratic National Convention, but this is the first test when it comes to a storm. And behind me is a state-of-the-art facility. Take a look. DOT, the National Guard, FEMA, all working out of the new Emergency Operations Center. The EOC activated Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and it's been up and running ever since. National Guard troops are now stationed at an armory in Washington, ready to respond to any emergencies that might come up. Now, a short time ago, I had an opportunity to talk with Doug Horrell. He's the Emergency Management Director, and he says being able to monitor all these resources from one central location gets help to people more efficiently.
We've got, excellent equipment. We've got enough space to operate. We've got the Federal Emergency Management Agency here with us, and there's room for them to have space to work. So it's ideal. I mean, this is the kind of place that you really want for an Emergency Operations Center. We've got co-location with the Department of Transportation, so we can see their cameras and we can see what's happening on the roadways in the eastern part of the state. I mean, we've got partnership with the Highway Patrol. We've got partnership with the National Guard. National Guard resources are out in the field supporting our operation. So it's just a real team effort.
It is a team effort. That was Ken Smith reporting live from the Emergency Center.
And we're going to go back to Greg Fishel now. And part of what the state is preparing for is snow in the mountains too, Greg.
Amazingly enough, we've been talking for days now about how the system was going to make a transformation from tropical sources of energy to extratropical sources of energy. And once it does that, and once it starts to do that, then it may bring a significant winter storm to the mountains of North Carolina within, say 36 to 48 hours. But that's down the road a little bit. Let's go on ahead and show you what things look like from a radar perspective. And like yesterday, the rains have stayed down east, but they've been very, very persistent. We really haven't seen much around our area during the course of the day. The latest stats on Sandy, this is the 5 o'clock advisory from the Hurricane Center, 33.4 north, 71.3 west. Max sustained winds at 75. The pressure is at 952 millibars, which is comparable to what Fran was, which was a Category 3 hurricane when it made landfall back in '96. But remember, this system has a much broader wind field. It's not as tightly wound in the middle as a classic hurricane is. And so despite that low pressure, we don't have Category 3 winds at this point. It is moving to the northeast at 15, and if it were to keep doing that, we would be absolutely fine. But it's not going to keep doing that, and we're talking about a storm that is going to move northeast and then make that hook to the north and west. A lot of factors in play here. Of course, we have Sandy sitting here, big blocking ridge of high pressure up over the Canadian and Maritimes. Everything has to go around that. So the next upper level low that is out here will be forced underneath that high. And once it gets into this position, then it will begin to hook Sandy back toward the north and west. And we expect a landfall along the Jersey coast, again, as we head toward tomorrow evening. Again, the wind field is absolutely huge with this thing. So the tropical storm force winds are already affecting a good part of the middle Atlantic coast. And if anything, that wind field will expand even more. And then the hurricane force wind gusts coming inland well to our north across the middle Atlantic seaboard as we head toward tomorrow, late tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. And again, the thing that makes this storm so scary is the fact that it is such a huge storm in terms of size and will affect so many people. The storm surge is also a very scary thing. As we take a look up here near New York and move the clock on ahead, we're looking at potentially a 12-foot storm surge. Look at these colors coming in here as this water is forced westward through the Long Island Sound. This could actually be a devastating event for New York City as we head toward tomorrow night and into Tuesday morning. And coming up, we'll be taking a look at what the storm surges have been like so far along our coast and what they're likely to be over the next 24 hours. Now, there's a lot of local impacts to this, and Amy has more on that coming up now. Amy?
Well, as you mentioned, it's a very big storm, and we'll likely be feeling the impacts around here in the form of wind and a little bit of rain over the next couple of days. We'll talk about the wind forecast in just a moment. Right now, we want to get you to our local radar. All of the rain today has been to our east, certainly the heaviest rain along our coastline. Cape Hatteras today reporting over 3 inches of rain, breaking a record. Yesterday reporting over 3 inches of rain, breaking a record then as well. But certainly all of the heavy rain has been to our east today along the coast. It has been dry around here, and that will continue over the next couple of hours, but we still have some rain possible in the forecast tonight and possibly into tomorrow and Tuesday as well. Here's a look at Sandy as it continues to move to the north and east. As Greg mentioned, expected to make a turn to the north and west in the coming days. But this is a very big circulation, and we'll be seeing some wraparound moisture dipping down into our area overnight tonight and possibly into tomorrow and Tuesday as well. So we still have a chance for rain, even though we haven't seen a whole lot around here yet. Here's Futurecast. It does show a little bit of rain, maybe some light showers this evening, especially along I-95 and points eastward. Tomorrow morning, as you're headed out to work, maybe getting the kids off to school, still a chance for a few light rain showers. The heaviest rain will be to our north. And then as we get into tomorrow evening, still a chance for some light rain tomorrow night. And some of the models showing a little bit of snow. We're not completely sold on this, but coming up in just a few minutes, we'll talk about where we could see some snow. We actually have some winter storm warnings in effect for parts of the state. We'll talk about that. Then on Tuesday, we'll start to see some improving conditions as far as the rain, but still very windy. Here's a look at the wind potential, the wind gusts over the next couple of days, over 30 miles per hour, potentially overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning. Maybe even 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts in the next couple of days. So while the center of this storm is way up to our north, it's a very broad circulation, and it's going to bring us some very strong winds over the next couple of days through probably Tuesday. So it's going to be very blustery around here in the coming days. The wind sticking around. It is going to be very breezy through Tuesday, possibly into the early part of Wednesday. 58 degrees right now at the airport. Overnight tonight, temperatures dropping down into the 40s. Tomorrow, afternoon highs in the 50s with improving conditions down to the south and especially down to the south and west. Then the big story becomes the cool down. Tuesday, look at the afternoon high only in the 40s. Wednesday, Halloween, going to be chilly for the trick-or-treaters. So definitely a big shock to the system for Tuesday.
Definitely. Quite a change. Amy, thank you. Well, it's a theme becoming all too familiar at UNC, mourning the loss of another member of the student body. Coming up, what happened to this first-year student and why police say the rest of the community should not be afraid.
And as we continue to track Sandy, this is a live look from Kill Devil Hills. You can see the churning of the surf, wind blowing still in the sand there. We'll continue our coverage for the next half hour of how this storm could not only impact us, but the eastern part of the United States.
And now we're back to our Hurricane Sandy coverage. You're looking live now at Wrightsville Beach, and look at all of the surfers out there, a paddleboarder, all taking advantage of the higher than normal waves, but conditions are starting to improve along the southern beaches.
We'll continue to follow Sandy, but there is other major news on this Sunday, including this. The Carolina community is coping with the death of a student. The body of 18-year-old David Shannon found in the Brewer Lane area of Carborough late last night. Kevin Holmes is live on campus where counselors spent the afternoon. Kevin?
David, word continues to spread on campus tonight and across the state. David Shannon is the student. He's from Charlotte. In fact, a lady just told my photographer and I a short while ago that he attended one of the largest high schools in the state, and more than 60 students from that high school currently attend UNC Chapel Hill. Shock has filled this campus tonight here in Chapel Hill. David Shannon, a first-year student here at UNC. Carrboro police detectives tell us his body was found near Brewer Lane. They aren't saying how he died, but tell us this appears to be an isolated incident and the public is not in danger. Here's the deal. Shannon's body was discovered Saturday night. Carrboro police detectives are asking anyone who knew about his whereabouts late Friday night to give them a call. Those who knew David say he was a joy to be around, well liked by everyone, and also say they're stunned to learn of his death.
I was really shocked because I didn't think this would happen to someone that I knew, especially from like Charlotte that I knew. It's tough because this is the second death that has happened in Chapel Hill.
And the first death she was referring to, of course, the death of UNC student Faith Hedgepeth, who was murdered in her off-campus apartment in Chapel Hill. No arrest in that case. Police in Carrboro continue to work this latest death, the death of David Shannon. Again, they haven't said exactly how he died. We'll have much more in 11, including reaction from those who knew David Shannon pretty much all of his life. We caught up with two people who went to middle school, high school, and college here at UNC with them. Hear what they have to say tonight at 11.
All right, Kevin Holmes reporting live in Chapel Hill. Kevin, thank you.
Sandy is impacting travel up and down the East Coast. RDU International Airport is already warning travelers to expect delays and even some cancellations for the next few days. All flights to New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. are already canceled. Your best bet if you're traveling in the next few days is to call the airline ahead of time. Amtrak has canceled service across the Northeast due to the storm. All service north of New York will stop starting tonight at 7. Nearly all Amtrak service across the eastern seaboard will be canceled starting Monday.
Still ahead tonight on our special coverage, Sandy taking a toll on coastal businesses. We'll visit a hotel along the Outer Banks, dealing with dozens of cancellations, plus a lineup of weekend events had to be put on hold.
Also, storm preparations are in full gear for the storm. Some fear could be one of the worst in history for the Northeast.
You're looking live now at Wrightsville Beach, where it's gotten a lot darker in the past half hour since our extended coverage of Hurricane Sandy began, but you can see that's not taking the life out of the surfers who are out there enjoying the surf that is up this evening. Now, again, we are in extended coverage of Sandy, and if you're looking for the CBS Evening News, you can find that right now on WRAL2. Well, we may not be dealing with the worst of Sandy. However, we're certainly feeling the impact of the storm, especially along the Outer Banks.
This area is no stranger to storms, the most recent being Irene last summer. We continue our live team coverage now from there tonight with WRAL's Renee Chu at Kill Devil Hills. Renee?
Deborah, there's rain pelting at me sideways. There's sand blowing all around me. There's even sea foam washing up on the beach. The winds are so punishing. I took the wind gauge here and wanted to see just how fast the wind speeds were, and we got a reading of 46 miles an hour. At times the winds will just kind of knock you off balance. It is a little difficult to walk here on the beach with the winds being as brutal as they are. Now with storm damage, it's not just homes that we're worried about. WRAL's Bruce Millworth shows us how Sandy is also taking a toll on local businesses.
The force and fury of Mother Nature, tricky to capture for a lasting memory.
The rain's coming down hard, the sand is, covers the camera, so I have my camera in a bag.
As a steady rain came down, snowy looking sea froth was flying up.
Nasty. Pretty nasty.
Waves pounded the coastline as Sandy slammed some Outer Banks businesses.
We've lost a good bit of money.
The John Yancey Motel had a bunch of cancellations. 65 rooms were reserved before the storm. Only 16 are now actually occupied.
And most of them are all newscasters. This weekend was a big weekend here on the Outer Banks. The chili cook-off, the zombie walk. There was just so many things.
Sandy is causing plenty of havoc with down power lines, isolated power outages, and rising water.
But we're blessed. I mean, we're blessed how this storm has tracked.
While things could have been a whole lot worse, it's still pretty rough. As bad as these conditions are on the Outer Banks, experts predict tomorrow will be even worse. Bruce Mildorf, WRAL News, Kill Devil Hills.
By the way, Bruce was able to recover his calf. He is going to need it tomorrow. Now, coming up at 10 and 11, you'll hear from locals who say there is no way they're going to leave. They choose to stay, and they're going to ride out this storm. Why they choose to stay and why they hate evacuations. David and Deborah, back to you.